Which brings me to number 2. We have also lost our way. The problem is not with the pursuit of marriage or with marriage as an institution, of course, but with the crisis created where the rightful respect Christians have for marriage meets this wholesale endorsement of a modern dating culture. And this mad mass psychosis over dating seems to me to originate from an utter lack of proper instruction on a theology of relationships. And as with any other area, when Christians are denied biblical instruction, we seem to readily borrow from contemporary culture to fill in the gaps. Yet the popular understanding of dating, sexuality, and relationships is completely incompatible with a proper theology of Christian community. But we then do what we do best and write countless books and articles about how to go about a non-Christian activity in the most Christianly manner. It's reacting when we should always be leading. And we can see a readily observable parallel to this in other Christian media. When so-called Christian movies or music are simply knockoffs of popular media, it looks like cheap, inauthentic pandering. And the same thing happens when our posture towards relationship models are also mere knockoffs or spins on what the greater culture is embracing at the time. We end up offering nothing close to the new reality that the church is meant to represent. No answers, no leadership, and no hope. Lacking a proper theology of Christian relationships, dating then is an assumed and encouraged norm. And it is through this cultural frenzy and media onslaught and tacky sermon jokes that the pursuit of a spouse through pop culture dating schemes becomes the primary interaction model in our communities. And it is in this way that we have let the culture teach us how to interact with one another, how we see one another, how we think, act, react, and speak to one another has all been taught to us by a culture given over to the patterns of this world. And we may combat this strongly in other areas of Christian life and practice. But when it comes to dating, mainstream Christianity has, for the most part, bought in wholesale to these popular norms. And this means that we have adopted rules of interpersonal engagement that necessarily create a predatory, competitive, divisive, superficial, worldly environment of mistrust. We have needlessly, yet enthusiastically, invited this culture into our community and thereby reinforced an improperly focused encounter with every guy and girl that meets in our churches. Everything becomes about the romantic qualifier. Meaning that, as a guy, every woman I meet is to be evaluated by whether or not she could potentially be the one or something else. No sparks, moving on. Unless, of course, you have some friends I could run through my romantic qualifier. Yeah? No? Oh. Many of us have forgotten or chosen to ignore that everyone is in your life for a reason, and there are far more relationships, deep and meaningful, than just a romantic one. We are all capable of so much more from one another than this all or nothing mentality that a dating culture creates. Christians, we cannot allow the world to define our interaction models and then adopt them under the guise of redeeming them. Christians are to be about the work of building an entirely new kind of community. Christ's kingdom breaking into this world. A new reality.